3 weeks into Paloma Reyes living in my spare bedroom, she cornered me in my own kitchen at 11 p.m., arms crossed, coffee mug abandoned on the counter, and said the exact sentence I'd been dreading since roughly day 4. "You're avoiding me." "I'm not avoiding you," I said, which was an obvious lie, delivered with all the conviction of a man holding a bag of frozen peas he didn't actually need, purely as an excuse to be standing near the freezer instead of the couch where she'd been sitting for the last hour. "You've eaten dinner in your room 4 nights this week. You leave for work 40 minutes earlier than you used to. Last night you did dishes for 25 minutes for 4 plates. She tilted her head, studying me the way you'd study a structural crack you weren't sure was cosmetic or load-bearing. I counted, Roman. 25 minutes. For 4 plates. My name is Roman Castillo. I was 30, a mechanical engineer at a manufacturing firm, which meant I spent my days solving problems with clear, logical solutions, and my nights, apparently, failing to apply a single one of those skills to the actual problem living in my spare bedroom. Paloma was 27, my best friend Theo's cousin, a freelance photographer between apartments after her lease fell through unexpectedly, 3 weeks from a contract gig that would put her back on her feet somewhere new. Theo had asked me, half joking, half not, if she could crash at my place for a month while she sorted things out. I'd said sure, no problem, because that's what you say when your best friend asks a reasonable favor, and because at the time I genuinely believed I could survive a month of proximity without any complications whatsoever. I was wrong within about 4 days. I'd met Paloma exactly twice before that month, both times briefly, both times at family gatherings I attended as Theo's +1, the guy who showed up, made polite conversation, and left before anything memorable could happen. I knew she was sharp, funny in a dry, understated way that snuck up on you, and completely unbothered by silence, which I'd always found strangely comforting in other people and immediately found something else entirely once she was living 20 feet from my bedroom. The first few days were fine. Easy even. She kept mostly to herself, edited photos at my kitchen table with headphones in, thanked me constantly for the couch that folded into a very mediocre bed, and generally behaved like a considerate houseguest who understood the arrangement was temporary and didn't want to overstay whatever welcome she'd been given. Then, on day 4, she made dinner. Just for herself. At first, some pasta thing with too much garlic that smelled like the best decision anyone had made in that kitchen in months. And when I got home from work, she looked up and said, without any particular weight behind it, "There's extra, if you want it." I sat down. We ate together. We talked for 2 hours about nothing important. Her work, my work, a documentary she'd half-watched the night before, and somewhere in the middle of that conversation I noticed, with the sudden clarity of a man realizing he'd walked into traffic, that I was enjoying myself more than a responsible adult should around his best friend's cousin who was living in his spare bedroom for exactly one reason, which had nothing to do with me. So I did the sensible thing. I panicked, quietly, and started finding reasons not to be in the same room as her for more than 10 minutes at a stretch. "You've been doing this for over 2 weeks, Paloma said now, still leaning against my kitchen counter, arms crossed, patient in the specific way that told me she wasn't going to let this go with a deflection. "I want to know why, and I'd like an actual answer, not whatever you were about to say about the peas." I set the peas down. "It's not about you. It's definitely about me. I'm the only variable that changed in this apartment 3 weeks ago." She had a point. She usually did, which was, if I was being honest with myself, part of the problem. "Fine," I said. "It's a little bit about you. A little bit. I've been giving you space. Genuinely, that was the actual plan. You're staying here temporarily. You're dealing with a lease falling apart and a move and a new contract. And the last thing you need is your best friend's overly attentive roommate hovering around asking about your day every 5 minutes. That's a very generous read of dinner in my room 4 nights a week," she said, not unkindly, but not letting me off the hook either. "Try again." I exhaled, because apparently I wasn't getting out of this kitchen without saying the actual thing. "Okay, The truth is I've been avoiding you because I like being around you more than I think I'm supposed to, given the circumstances, and I decided the responsible move was to just remove myself from situations where that kept becoming obvious. The kitchen went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside a car passed with its windows down, music fading in and out, and neither of us said anything for a second that stretched out longer than either of us seemed prepared for. "Roman, I know how this sounds," I said quickly, because now that I'd started I couldn't seem to stop. "You're Theo's cousin. You're staying in my apartment because you needed somewhere to land, not because either of us was angling for anything. The math on this is genuinely terrible. Best friend's cousin, temporary living situation, a month with an expiration date already built into it. There's no version of this that doesn't sound like a spectacularly bad idea on paper." "On paper," she repeated slowly, uncrossing her arms. "On paper," I confirmed. "In practice, I've spent 3 weeks making excuses to be somewhere else because every time I'm actually in a room with you for more than 20 minutes, I start forgetting all the reasons this is supposed to be complicated." Paloma was quiet for a moment, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite place, somewhere between surprised and something warmer trying to work its way through the surprise. "You could have just told me that instead of doing dishes for 25 minutes. In hindsight, yes. That would have been the more efficient approach. I'm an engineer. I usually prefer efficient approaches. This one got away from me." She almost smiled, then caught herself, like she wanted to make sure she understood the situation fully before she let herself react to it. "So this whole time, the extra early mornings, the dinners in your room, the truly impressive commitment to dish-related busy work, that was all because you didn't want to sit with whatever this is." "That's an accurate summary, yes. I thought I'd done something," she admitted, quieter now. "I spent a week and a half wondering if I'd overstayed my welcome or said something wrong, or if you regretted telling Theo I could stay here. I actually started looking at short-term sublets out of guilt, Roman." Something in my chest tightened at that. "That's not what this was. That's the opposite of what this was. I like having you here. That's the whole problem. That's a genuinely terrible problem to have," she said, but there was something lighter in her voice now, something almost amused underneath the honesty. "For the record, I noticed you noticing me. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it or being paranoid, so I decided to just corner you in the kitchen and find out instead of sitting with the uncertainty for another 2 weeks. You noticed? Roman, you left for work 40 minutes early 3 days in a row. I'm a photographer. Noticing things is literally my job." She stepped a little closer, close enough now that the space between us had shifted into something less accidental. "I wasn't going to say anything, because you're Theo's best friend, and I'm staying here temporarily, and there's approximately 100 reasons this could get complicated in ways neither of us actually wants." 100 reasons, I agreed. I've counted most of them at 2 a.m. over the last 3 weeks. And yet, she tilted her head, studying me the way she had at the start of this conversation. Except the crack she was looking for now felt like a different kind entirely. "You still just told me the truth instead of retreating to your room with a plate of pasta again. I got tired of the dish-related busy work," I admitted. "It's not sustainable. My hands are going to be permanently pruny by the end of the month." That got a real laugh out of her, short and surprised, the kind that snuck out before she'd fully decided to allow it. "So what do we do with this? I've got, a week and a half left in this apartment before my new place is ready. That's not exactly a lot of runway for figuring out 100 complicated reasons." "No," I agreed. "It's really not. Do you want to figure it out anyway?" she asked, and there was something steadier under the question now. Less like she was testing the water and more like she'd already decided to jump in and just wanted company on the way down. I looked at her, really looked, the way I'd been carefully avoiding doing for 3 weeks straight, and found I didn't have a single sensible engineering reason left to keep standing on the other side of the kitchen. I think I've wanted to figure it out since about day 4, if I'm being honest. The garlic pasta night. I just spent the following 2.5 weeks trying to talk myself out of it. How's that going? Not well. In case that wasn't obvious from the pea situation, Paloma crossed the last of the distance between us, close enough now that I could see her actually deciding to do it. The same small flicker of nerve I imagined she brought to every photograph that actually mattered to her. "For what it's worth," she said, "I've been finding excuses to cook extra portions for 3 weeks. I told myself it was just good houseguest etiquette. It was not just good houseguest etiquette. You've been feeding me on purpose. I've been feeding you very much on purpose, Roman. I'm a considerate houseguest, but I'm not that considerate. I don't make extra garlic pasta for people I'm not at least a little interested in." Something in my chest finally settled, the tight, careful thing I'd been carrying around for weeks loosening all at once. I have genuinely never been more relieved to hear about pasta. Don't get used to it. It's a limited time offer. Once I move out, you're back to fending for yourself. Then I should probably make the most of the next week and a half, I said, and reached out to take her hand, slow and deliberate, giving her every chance to pull back if this wasn't actually where she wanted to land. She didn't. Her fingers laced through mine easily, like they'd been planning to do exactly that for 3 weeks, and had simply been waiting on me to stop hiding behind frozen vegetables. "So what does the next week and a half look like?" she asked, quieter now, standing close enough that I could see the same nerve and certainty both sitting behind her eyes at once. "Dinner at the actual table," I said. "No more retreating to separate rooms. And significantly less dishwashing as an avoidance strategy starting tonight. That's a low bar, Roman. I contain very few functioning skills around you, apparently. Restraint was never one of them. I've just spent 3 weeks pretending otherwise." She laughed again, and this time I didn't let the moment pass without doing something about it. I leaned in, giving her the same chance I'd have wanted if our positions were reversed, and when she met me the rest of the way, I kissed her right there in the kitchen where 25 minutes of dishwashing had apparently been building toward exactly this the entire time. She made a small, surprised sound against my mouth, then kissed me back like 3 weeks of careful distance had just collapsed all at once, which, I suppose, it had. When we finally broke apart, she was smiling, a little breathless, forehead resting against mine. "I'm going to tell Theo it was the pasta. Tell him whatever you want. I'm just relieved I don't have to think of another reason to be near the freezer. You're going to have a lot of very healthy-looking frozen vegetables in your freezer by the time I move out." "Worth it," I said, and meant it more than I'd meant almost anything that month. Her new apartment was ready a week and a half later, right on schedule, except by then half her things had somehow migrated permanently into my spare room anyway, and Theo, when he finally found out, just shook his head and said he should have seen it coming the second he asked me to let his cousin crash on my couch. Because apparently everyone in his family had a talent for turning a temporary favor into something nobody saw coming until it already had. 6 months later, Paloma still makes garlic pasta most Sundays, on purpose, no pretense required anymore, and I still haven't fully recovered from how many dishes I washed that month for no functional reason whatsoever. But every time she catches me smiling at nothing in particular while she's editing photos at my kitchen table, headphones in, completely unaware I'm watching, she just looks up, smiles back, and says she noticed a lot sooner than I gave her credit for. What would you have done if your best friend's cousin moved in for a month and caught you avoiding her? Have you ever had someone living under your roof turn into someone you couldn't imagine your life without? Tell your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next.